Welcome to First Down Punts, a show about the on-field and off-the-field news in the world of pro football, as well as how it relates to fantasy football all season long. Thanks for joining in, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And now, here is your host, Orcus.
And welcome in, everyone, to another episode of First Down Punts. Today, we're going to be going over a thing I like to call staplebacks, which are players in fantasy football that score points in multiple ways. You got to think about players like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Jahmyr Gibbs. Even Deebo Samuel became a stapleback for 1 year a couple years ago. Now he's been traded to Washington, so we'll see if he can revive that life. But today we're going to go over what are the stapleback requirements and what players hit them last year. What players do we think can hit them next year? This doesn't mean they should be top 10 picks. It means that you're going to get good value if you can find players who score points in multiple ways. Think of PPR backs is what people call them, or running quarterbacks. We're just going to combine all this and make them staplebacks. That's the definition of a stapleback, players that score points at multiple positions. So to start off, we're going to go over the top 20 running backs and the top 20 quarterbacks from my home league last year and see who met the requirements of what a stapleback is. Before we do that, let's say what those requirements are. For quarterbacks, you have to score over 4,200 total yards, rushing and passing. But you do have to have 400 yards rushing. That's the low bar. If you have anything over 400 and you throw for what would be needed 3,800 to make 4,200 total, you're under consideration for a stapleback. The final thing is 30 touchdowns. So 4,200 total yards, 400 rushing yards, and 30 total touchdowns for the quarterback position would be our requirements. As for the running back, you have to have 1,400 total yards, 400 receiving yards, and over 10 total touchdowns, 10 plus touchdowns. I figure if you're going to be a PPR back, you should be able to get 400 receiving yards. And guys, like I said, like McCaffrey and Gibbs and all those, they hit those usually no problem. McCaffrey was hurt last year, so Gibbs is a new superstar. But there's a lot of guys that came real close. There's a couple surprise guys, but we're going to get into that. We're going to go over the top 20 running backs at this time. When we do this, you'll see that Saquon Barkley was our number one running back. But what you also notice is that he didn't have over 400 yards receiving. He missed that by 122 yards. So he wouldn't even be considered a staple back based off his stats last year. Does that mean he's a bad pick? No, he's a first-round pick, and everybody knows that. I'm not here to talk about that. Generally, I think Saquon Barkley's hit the 400-yard receiving mark probably 3 or 4 times in his career already. So I think just as much success as they had rushing, they didn't have to throw the ball as much, and usually when they did, it was a deep shot to Devontae or A.J. Brown. But you go to the next guy on the list, Jahmyr Gibbs, my Lions' hometown favorite. I love him. 1,412 rushing yards, 16 touchdowns, 52 receptions, 517 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. So he hit the 1,400 total yards, the 400 receiving yards, and the 10 touchdowns. He's a staple back from last year. Everybody suspected he would have a successful season. He finished as a number 2 back, but he hit all 3 marks to be considered a staple back. You got guys further down the list you look at, there were high picks, maybe a Jonathan Taylor. He had 1,431 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns, 18 receptions for 136 yards and 1 touchdown. He only hit 2 to 3 marks, so he's another great player that did not hit it. When you look at guys like that almost hit it, James Conner, 1,094 yards rushing and 8 rushing touchdowns, 47 receptions, 414 receiving, and 1 touchdown. He missed it by 1 touchdown. Now, does that make James Conner a first-round pick? No. But does that make them a valuable player and under consideration for staple back quality? Absolutely. Now, he's up there in age. He's in Arizona. They drafted a couple younger guys recently. We'll see what happens going into this year. But these are just type of players we're looking at. So let's go over to QBs. We got the top 20 quarterbacks from my home league, which is a 2-quarterback league, not not a super flex, a 2 QB league. We play in a huge league. I'm going to do a show on that later on. You guys will think we're crazy, but it's super competitive, super fun. And we've added the things over the years that make it even better. But back to the quarterback situation. As I mentioned in the intro, Lamar Jackson was a staple back. He usually is. 172 passing yards, 41 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 915 rushing yards. Lamar's hit 1,200 before. This is the second or third time going over 800. He's an amazing talent. He's one of my favorite players in the NFL that doesn't play for the Lions. But 4,200 total yards, 400 rush yards, 30 touchdowns, no problem. Josh Allen, mentioned him, another guy, 3,731 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, but had 531 rushing yards and 12 rushing touchdowns. I think he had 15 last year. So yes on the requirements. You look at guys like the biggest surprise of this list is Bo Nix. Bo Nix finished 7th in our home league in scoring. 3,775 passing yards, 29 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 430 rushing yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, he just made it with the yards, but he cleared the touchdown and the rushing marks. He snuck by on all accounts, honestly. But he made it. He's a staple back in our mind. Like, do I think he should be a first-round pick? No. Even in a 2 QB league? No. Do I think he should be a third-round pick in a 2 QB league, Superflex league? Yeah. We value running backs because we throw for 6-yard passing touchdowns, not the 4 like most standard leagues, that's another video I can do just on that. It's ridiculous. Touchdowns count for 6 points. Make them in your league worth 6 points. So what? You got to draft a quarterback in the first round instead of the 4th. It's just going to make it more realistic to the NFL. You see teams reaching all the time on quarterbacks. Why are you so scared to play that way? Use these players, guys. Use them the value of what they truly are. Quarterback's the most important position in the NFL. It should be the most important position in your league. Yes, you want to try and create some parity amongst all players, but make it harder on the passing. Add more yards instead of it being 10 passing yards or 20 passing yards or whatever. Like I said, I'm not going to keep getting into it. That's a whole nother video. But get back to these guys. Bo Nix was a huge surprise for me to be a staple back, especially as a rookie. Started off rough. You go to a guy like Kyler Murray, who's known for his rushing ability. He threw for 3,851, 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, had 572 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, but he missed the touchdown mark by 4. He only had 26 total touchdowns on the season. I think he missed the game last year, but all the same, he should be able to hit 30 as talented as he is. So, and Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride could have helped that if they'd have caught some more touchdowns over the season. We'll get into those when we start ranking fantasy players. McBride's a superstar, obviously. I wouldn't have drafted Harrison as high as everybody did last year. So, but these are the guys, top 20, like I said. Hopefully you had time to look at this. If not, pause the video and check it out just so you can see the total stats. Now, we're going to go over the players who met the requirements of the staple backs and the players who came close based off their statistical performance. The players who came close based off what they missed it by, basically. So we'll get into that now. As you can see, quarterbacks that met the staple back requirements: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, superstar rookie Jaden Daniels, and surprise rookie Bo Nix. I don't think anybody thought Bo Nix was going to have the season he had statistically. Guys that just missed the cut. Baker Mayfield needed 22 rushing yards to be a staple back. That should tell you something. He's very capable of being a staple back this upcoming season, and he should be drafted as such. Kyler Murray needed 4 more touchdowns. He's hit 30 touchdowns before, but he's got to stay healthy, and he's got to have his guys around him help him. Jalen Hurts was a staple back for 2 or 3 years in a row. Last year, Saquon had 2,000 rushing yards. He missed the mark by over 600 yards. And Jalen Hurts should be a high pick, but you have to take these things into consideration. Saquon Barkley's still going to be there this year, and they just paid him. So you're going to have less money for all the players around. And Patrick Mahomes, Patrick Mahomes has had some down years recently because they're worried more about winning than they are about being a high-flying scoring offense. Personally, I think Mahomes is going to have a bounce back season this year. I think they're going to worry about getting some more points on the board. They're not going to focus so much on Travis Kelce, and they're going to get some help around Mahomes. But he missed it by 93 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. Patty Mahomes runs for like 20 yards a game, 15, 20 yards a game, just accumulates yards over the course of the season and ends up with 350, 400 yards on a regular basis. Over to the running backs, you see Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and Devon Achane are the only 3 running backs from last year that met the requirements. Achane had like 900 plus rushing yards, so he didn't even hit 1,000, but he had 78 catches for almost 600 yards receiving. Bijan, you know how good he is. There's a reason he's a top 10 pick. Jahmyr Gibbs, number 12 overall. These guys are, and they'll probably all be first 15 picks in next year's draft, and almost all drafts next year. So the guys that missed the cut, barely, Alvin Kamara needed 2 touchdowns. Now, who knows what's going on with the Saints? They just hired an OC, Kellen Moore from the Philly, used to be in Dallas and stuff, as a head coach. We're going to find they restructured Derek Carr, I believe, along with like 10 other guys because they're always over the cap at the end of the season. So we're going to see what happens with Kamara. We're going to see if Kendre Miller can eat into his timeshare. Next guy, breakout, Chase Brown. He needed 40 receiving yards. He didn't even start all season. This is a guy that's going to be drafted next year. They did just re-sign Samaje Perine after he spent a couple years with Denver. And Perine was very successful for them when he was there. I mean, he never got the full load because Mixon, but every time Mixon was out, Perine was a very good back for them. I believe they're going to try to do what they did last year with Zach Moss, split some time, but I do think they've seen Chase Brown can handle a lot. So it's probably going to be more of a 70-30 split, maybe 60-40. I think Chase Brown's definitely going to have a great season this year as long as they don't go drafting one of these running backs I love in the draft. James Conner, like I said, missed it by 1 touchdown. And he probably could have got that if they'd got some more first downs, got closer. Aaron Jones Sr. from Minnesota, who just re-upped with Minnesota, needed 3 touchdowns. Darnold played really well, but he's gone to Seattle. Who knows what that is? Aaron Rodgers going to sign there? I think he's going to Pitt still. He needed 3 touchdowns. If they're starting J.J. McCarthy, Aaron Jones is going to be more involved. Now, what's the success of the offense going to be? Who knows? Another guy that shocked me last year, Bucky Irving, needed 8 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. Didn't start all season. Didn't get the majority of carries to the second half of the season, and even had a third guy in there at half the time. So if he can they're going to make him this number 1 this year and have Rachaad White be the backup. So I'm sure he's going to be plenty capable of being a staple back. This is a guy I like a lot that I think could be very good for fantasy football next year. Saquon Barkley, like I said, he missed it by 122 yards. He's hit 400 yards of receiving plenty of times. I'm not worried about him being successful as a fantasy football running back. He is a staple back, even though he didn't hit the marks this year. The last guy, Josh Jacobs, short of 58 receiving yards. Like, he showed his receiving chops last year, finally got his first receiving touchdown of his career. I hate the Packers, but I like to see Josh Jacobs doing good because I liked him when he was with the Raiders. So we've seen him have success before. I'm sure we'll have success again, which is, unfortunately for my Lions, we'll have to worry about when the time comes this next season. These are guys I like. These are guys you should be considering drafting next year, and this is what is considered a staple back. Quarterbacks, again, 4,200 total yards, 400 rushing yards, 30 total touchdowns. For running backs, 1,400 total yards, 400 receiving yards, and 10 total touchdowns or more. So that's what you're looking for. That's what a staple back is. Let's staple some stats together and win fantasy football. Other than that, guys, I hope you guys have a good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time of day it is. Till next time, thanks for watching.